The first time I built my small business to run without me, it took about 4 years to get through the process. It was super painful. But this time around, I was able to do it in about 4 months. And I realized there are 8 key differences between what I did then and what I'm doing now that allowed me to go so much faster through the journey of systemizing my business. And I thought I would share them with you in case it helps you cut down your timeline as well. Difference number 1 is the first time around, I knew I needed to build my business that could run without me, but I was also chasing all these other shiny objects. Really, at the end of the day, if you want to build a business that can run without you, you need to get very clear on what does the business need to do to continue to exist. That's largely basic sales, basic marketing, basic sales, fulfillment in some form, and then a retention engine. You need those core pieces in place. And yes, there's some admin as well. So when you're trying to build a business that runs without you, you need to focus on that area. And I'm telling my past self this. But what I did the first time around is I knew, hey, the main flow our clients get through needs to get organized, but also I should figure out YouTube. And also I should figure out that just chasing these other areas that weren't actually the main constraint. This time around for systemizing, I was pretty obsessive with only focusing our energy, and by that I mean mine and my team's, on what is the main bottleneck of getting me removed from the business. So it might have been sales calls at one point. It might have been fulfillment at one point. It might have been marketing at one point. Obviously, it's not marketing. I'm still here. But figuring out those pieces one by one was the hard push that we had to do. And getting comfortable saying no to things that sounded cool but didn't align with the number one constraint we identified was a real skill, actually, and made a big difference versus the previous times around. If you're curious of how exactly that worked, you can watch my video up here that talks about how I found the top bottleneck, how you can do it too, and how I put that inside a key metrics tracker for my team to have constant awareness of as well. Now, speaking of constant, one thing constant about being in especially the founder-led phase of building a business that runs without you is it can feel like constant work, and often it is constant work. And when you find yourself working 14-hour days to handle the influx of sales calls you have, make sure you're fulfilling excellence to clients and managing your team, when you do that for days and days on end, you are rightly going to start questioning, what the hell am I doing with my life? This becomes extra challenging when there's no end in sight. And that's one of the big differences this time around. I had knowingly chosen to essentially restart my business by launching a whole new division that's kind of its own brand new thing. And when I did that, I knew roughly the steps I had to go through. I knew how long it was going to take, and I knew and was comfortable with hard work in a short period of time. Hell, I even talked to my spouse to make sure he was aware of what I was about to sign up for. Knowing that your goals are to remove yourself from 95% of fulfillment, then remove yourself from 75% of sales, and that it's going to take approximately this long. And in that timeline, you're going to be working crazy hours for this 4-week period where everything overlaps. That is really therapeutic. That's cathartic to know, okay, it's bad for this period, but then the end is in sight. And that experience was a big difference this time around versus previous attempts. Speaking of experience, one bit of experience that I think helped me a lot was my experience in hiring. In order to build a business that can run without me, when you have a human service that you are selling, that's what we do here at ProcessDriven. It's a one-on-one service. You need humans. And so we needed to do quite a lot of hiring. I think there was something like 6 different rounds of hiring in this 4-month period to go through all these roles where I was personally involved in the process. And the only way that was possible while also selling and fulfilling and building and whatever was because we had a solid process for how we actually did the hiring and some reps under our belt. If you're curious about how I went about the hiring flow, you can actually steal my exact scoreboard and the whole flow up here in this video. One realization I had when prepping for this video is that with our hiring process during this entire crazy period, we didn't have anybody get into a role that we had to then remove. We had enough screening in place that 100% of people who made it to the final step of the journey, which was either the offer or the contract or whatever, ended up staying on and being a long-term fit, which is like kind of crazy and not the norm. So I'm really proud of that process if you want to check it out up here. Now, speaking of hiring, I mentioned we're doing a lot of it, but one change that happened this time around is rather than looking at employee roles, we really shifted our focus towards contractors. We designed positions with the intention of having them be really strong fits for a contract person without them being too involved in our business or breaking any rules. We're trying to always follow all of the rules all of the time. Occupational hazard. But back when I was hiring employees, I was really paying for it I saved a little bit of money, but I cost myself a whole lot of time. Employees' roles give you a lot more control and you're able to shape somebody, but in exchange, your journey of figuring out if they're a fit and even the hiring process is way, way slower. I'm a broken record on this, but I'm really fortunate about the team that we've built around us today. We more than doubled our team during this 4-month period because we are a small business just like yours. And, I was nervous that we were going to, get some crappy people in here and it'd be like, stress. It's been fantastic. And we've had fantastic hires both on the fulfillment side and on the marketing and funnel side, which having both of those happening at the same time was kind of key to making this be a 4-month timeline. We were solving one constraint, then moving to the next, then moving to the next, as I talk about in this interview with the founder of Kit, Nathan Barry, where I talk through the actual process of systemizing these two pieces back to back. But speaking of funnels, the funnels we had, meaning the step-by-step journeys people could go on to get into our orbit, were a key player in allowing us to do this whole project. After all, I was essentially building this new business while also running what ProcessDriven currently was, which was like a courses, a membership, that kind of business. And so by having these two separate businesses, one that was a really screaming, needy baby, and the other one that was like a bit of a moody teenager, I needed to make sure that we could manage both of those with a super tiny core team. We're talking 3 to 4 people in the core center of the business. So when we went into crazy time of building out this new little baby, this new adventure, we didn't have to work very hard on demand generation. We had people we've been giving free content to for 5, 6, 7 years. And so when we had something to sell, we were able to just focus on telling them what we had to sell rather than having to attract people from scratch. But don't be discouraged here, because if you're watching this video, you don't need a YouTube channel with 140,000 followers to do this. This wasn't about YouTube. This was simply having past experience, which at 22, when I started this business, I had none of. I had no money. I had no connections. I didn't have any professional network. I didn't, nothing, fully blank slate. This time around, I had prior clients. And if you're watching this, you probably do too. You have people you've worked with in the past, probably a few hundred or a few thousand at this point. You have people who know about you, your followers on LinkedIn, your email list, your social media following. You have your personal connections, or you have money, which is also a great resource. Now, speaking of money, the next difference between this time and the last time is that this time around, I was really focused on the budget. And this is something I have to credit my business coach with. When we were doing our annual planning, he sat down and he's like, Layla, what's your budget? And I was like, well, I have a budget. I write down what we're making. I keep track of things, but it's not really strategic. Here's what I have. And he's like, no, this should be a strategic document. Your budget should kind of kick off everything else based on what you think is possible. And that to me was a big unlock. It was just a small modification in my behavior. And I actually talk about it in this video about how my budget becomes the root of my whole annual plan. But that really changed how I went about systemizing, because I was looking at the bottlenecks I was trying to solve and the cash flow I had, and making sure I was investing that extra cash flow that we created from this service back into the product. So every time we made money from the service, money went back into that next hire, that next offer, that next program, that next whatever. So that way the machine kept cooking. The first time around, I was much less mature when it comes to the budgeting side of things. And I really was just trying to make sure we had enough cash in the bank. I was doing classic cash accounting. I was just making sure my bank balance was the right amount. I wasn't thinking about it as this engine of fuel that I can allocate into the right area to make sure we're growing in the right way. Like if you're in a garden, you put fertilizer on the thing that needs a little extra growth spurt or a little extra support. That's how you should be thinking about money, I realize now. But at the time, I was just like, oh my God, I need to hoard all the money because what if it goes away? Classic working class person who never had money before, freaking out about actually having a salary that's more than $40K a year. Growth. The next big difference is execution partners. So the first time I was organizing this business, I did have a team around me, but I mostly had assistants. And I, as a manager, wasn't skilled enough to work with assistants to know how to correctly delegate to them and get them to take things off of my plate rather than just waiting for me to spoon feed it. I have a whole video on that right up here. This time around, I still had execution-oriented people around me, but they had been with me for a while and I'd gotten a lot better at delegation. So it became very clear as we went into this project that there was going to be 2 roles in this project. There's 3 people, but 2 real roles. Role 1 is the crazy tinkerer experimenter who's going to be talking to clients, figuring out what's working, and pioneering the path. That was my role because I'm crazy. And then number 2 is the person who takes what we learned and makes it systematic, makes it repeatable, makes it so that they can do it next time. And that was the role of the 2 other people in this project. And this pairing allowed me to speed up so much faster than the first time around. It's why on this channel, so often I will say, if you're trying to systemize a business, the job of creating SOPs is not the job of the owner, it's the job of the doer, the person doing the task long term. That's what we actually practiced. God forbid, practicing what we preach. It was just so much faster than that first time around so many years ago. But speaking of speed, I want to be candid with you. Both times around, I worked my ass off to go through the process of building a business that can run itself. I knew what I needed to do. And in order to make this time faster, I worked hard. I compressed our timeline and I forced myself to work longer than what I normally would because I wanted to make sure this transition happened really quickly. I remember telling a friend at the time, I didn't even realize I could work this hard. Like, I didn't even realize I was capable of this much. And those are things for someone as hardworking as me is not a phrase I thought I would say. So in many ways, this was not a difference at all from the previous point. Even though the timeline was much compressed and I was using all these other resources, it was still a lot of work. But there was one big difference around this area, which is how my time was being spent. Early on, when I would be working on building a business that could run without me, I would work on something like getting sales to flow. I'd get myself out of it, and then I'd immediately fill all of my free time, so I'm back at 14 hours a day, solving the next problem. That's not what I did this time around, and that was really intentional. I really like my work. It's easy for me. I'm great at hyperfixating. 14-hour days, fine, but not for a long time. So when I started getting my time back, I didn't reallocate it towards something else. I just left there be less time on my plate. So I went from 14 hours to 12 to 10, back to an 8-hour day. Then when I had the 8-hour day, when I had free time, I started reallocating that time thoughtfully to the next big thing. Now, if you resonate with some of the stuff I'm talking about here, you might want to check out this video on how to stop getting overwhelmed at work. It talks about some of these strategies if you want to apply them for yourself. But there's some big unlocks I realized. Number 1, making sure I was penciling in free time allowed me to stay active in the communities I'm in, the support communities, the masterminds, the friends I like to talk to. And one specific instance came of that. A friend, Clay Herbert and Barrett Brooks, they were talking about this event Seth Godin is having for free for a bunch of women to learn about marketing. And if I was in my normal state, 1, I never would have seen the message, and 2, I would have had no time to go. But I applied, I got in, and ended up spending the week with Seth Godin and a bunch of amazing female entrepreneurs for free in New York City. And that's not something I would have done had I been balls to the wall, 100% maxed out or more. The second thing I can think of is recently there's been a change in the YouTube algorithm. And because we gave ourselves free time and wiggle room, we saw this change in the algorithm. We realized, oh, if we post some social posts, people are going to see them in ways they didn't before. And so we spent 90 minutes, 2 hours writing out a bunch of posts. Those posts in 90 minutes ended up generating over 300 email subscribers, which if we were paying for ads, that would have been like $22,000 in cost. And we got them for free and 90 minutes of work. And that's the kind of response to trends and feedback and whatever that you just don't have time for when you are 110% maxed out. But there's one other elephant in the room that you probably already know about that I feel like I need to confess. Another big difference between now and the last time is I have been helping small businesses organize their operations for this whole time. It's been 8 years now. So because of that, this time around, I was able to practice what we preach to our clients. I've worked with thousands of businesses going through the journey of systemizing and documenting their knowledge and writing down their tasks and writing down their process. And that really helped me go through this journey super fast at a hyperspeed on those parts of the process. If I took the Systemization Snapshot, which is the assessment of operations we have for free on our website, but also we give to clients before we work with them, we would have gotten a 0% score. We started with nothing, but I had thousands of reps at that point of getting small businesses from 0% all the way to 100% systemized, that hugely sped up my timeline. And if you want to see where you fall on that quiz, you can actually take it in the description below. But this allowed me to skip over common mistakes like having a bunch of overdue tasks, broken promises, unclear communication, having nothing written down, overcomplicating things. Like I knew how to bypass so much of that. But my Pennsylvania Dutch work ethic only got me so far. At the end of the day, if you want to systemize a business when you have no time, you need tactics. You need to know exactly that you're spending your time on the things that free up your time for tomorrow, which is what we cover in this video here. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy the process.